Hey guys, Space Cat here. Ignore the mess, I'll just edit that out. That's better. Okay, so first of all, I know it's been forever since I last uploaded. And in all honesty, I wasn't even planning on uploading anything until the summer because college is just hectic and crazy and I didn't think I'd have time to edit anything. But I recently played through Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and seeing as Jedi Survivor is supposed to come out later this month, I think it's the 28th, I really needed to get this video out and give you guys my honest opinion on this game. So the TLDR of this video is that I kind of think the game sucks. Now, by saying that, I know a bunch of people are gonna get mad, and I know I'm gonna probably have some keyboard warriors down in the comments being like, "You have no idea what you're talking about. How dare you trash on this masterpiece of a game." White bush. Let me preface this with two things. First of all, I am not a huge Star Wars fan by any stretch of the imagination. I've watched all of the movies, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the sequel trilogy, but that's about it. I've watched like first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian maybe. I watched like Solo and Rogue One, but I didn't grow up with like Clone Wars. I didn't really play any of the games growing up. Battlefront 2 is like my main experience with a Star Wars game. I never played SWTOR or KOTOR or any of the OTORs. I didn't really read any of the books or comics or anything like that. And I preface all of this because my roommate is a massive Star Wars fan, and he's actually the main reason why I played through this game. He said I really needed to play it and that I really needed to play through the entire thing to really like understand what is so good about this game. The second thing that we need to cover before I actually talk about this game is that before playing this, within the same semester, like this semester, within like a month, I beat Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 all the way through, including the DLC, all of Sekiro, including a few of the like gauntlets of strength. And then last summer, before going to college, I played through all of the Uncharted series on crushing difficulty. That's important because I'm going to be relating a lot of stuff from Fallen Order, a lot of the gameplay and level design and stuff like that, to the way that it's done in those games. In this video, I actually won't be talking about the story very much, and that's primarily because I don't want to worry about spoilers or anything. And also because I don't really have any complaints or anything to say about the story. It's a solid story, it's masterfully crafted, and I could go on and on about how good the story is, but obviously most of the game is going to be the gameplay and the level designs. And so that's what I want to talk about, and that's what I have formed my opinion based on. So the very first experience you get whenever you boot up the game and you start your grand adventure, you play as Cal Kestis, parkouring through a bunch of ship ruins on Braca. And for me at least, these scenes, this level is very reminiscent of the Uncharted games and those parkour sections, especially when you get on a train and it starts derailing. Obviously that's going to be very familiar for us Uncharted fans because that's Uncharted 2. You start in a derailed train, not knowing what the heck has happened. This like probably one of the strongest starts to any video game ever. Like, yes, we could go on and on about some of the most amazing games of all time, but for me at least, that start on a derailed train, there's nothing quite like it. And so, as much as I want to say it's a good thing that it was reminiscent of Uncharted, it's not. Because as janky as it is in Uncharted, it feels way jankier in Jedi Fallen Order. Like, it does not feel satisfying to control Cal through pretty much any of that, for a number of different reasons. For one, a lot of the movement skills that you have by the end of the game, you just straight up don't have in the beginning. Even when you start on New Game Plus, it gets rid of all of that. And so the most fun and most satisfying things you can do when controlling Cal, you just can't do from the very beginning of the game. While it does feel way more satisfying whenever you finally do get the abilities such as the wall run or the double jump, it's not until about halfway through the game that you have these abilities. And so it kind of ruins that first half of the game. You're just left not having these movement abilities that make you feel like a Jedi. And that brings me to one thing that was very annoying for me the entire way through the game. Constantly, Cal Kestis is referred to as a Jedi. Now, I may be mistaken. Again, I am not a Star Wars fan. I don't know the lore. I don't know how all of this works. But Cal's master was killed in the Order 66 Purge while Cal was still a Padawan, meaning that Cal never actually became a Jedi. He never became more than a Padawan. It makes sense then that he wouldn't have all of these abilities. But if that's the case, then why is he called a Jedi throughout the entire game by several people, including himself? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, getting off of my tangent about Cal not being a Jedi, we get to then the puzzles, which aren't a key part of the game, but they're there, and so I feel like I need to address them. Like I said, there aren't a lot, and so when there aren't very many, you would think that that must mean the few that are there are probably the most refined. Like, they feel very good, very fun to do. They're just there for a minute, and then you might forget about them, but if you ever have to redo them again, it's not going to be a huge pain. That's where you'd be wrong, you stupid person. You see, puzzles in games are really hard to develop. Generally, most gamers would agree, like Portal 2 is the golden child of puzzle games, and while some games do reach the bar of Portal 2, nothing will go above it. And the puzzles in Jedi Fallen Order are just another set of challenges that fall far below that bar that Valve set in their iconic game. I hate saying this because I don't want to keep using this word to describe Fallen Order, but the puzzles are unsatisfying. And they aren't bad per se. Some of them are, but for the most part, it doesn't feel fun to solve. A perfect example is this puzzle right here on Zepho. In order to solve it, all you need to do is use BD1's overcharge ability, parkour on top of a platform and sever some wires, and then wall run and double jump to another platform. At least that's how I solved it. I don't even know if that's the right way to solve it, but that's how I solved it. And the hardest part of all of this was just timing the wall running and double jump. Because if you mess up that timing, you're just not gonna land on the platform you're supposed to land on. The rest of the puzzle is simple though. It's barely even worthy of being called a puzzle. It's just a few step-by-step actions that aren't that hard to piece together. Another example of a puzzle that's easy to solve but difficult to execute the solution is here on Bogano. Now, it uses the same ball and plate design that we see throughout the ruins in Zepho. So already we're off to a good start because it's, again, a concept that we're familiar with, and so you would think that you just use the concept in a new way, making it slightly more complex, and you've made an interesting puzzle. That's what Portal 2 did a lot of times. Each chapter was defined by a key mechanic that would get built upon and then eventually brought up again at a later date. But oh lord, does Fallen Order miss the mark. You see, the execution of this puzzle frustrated me far more than it really should have. And the reason is, in order to get this ball onto this plate, you have to force push the ball up this ramp to where it needs to go. Now, that doesn't sound hard, but what you may or may not notice is that the ramp is actually very thin. So if you miss it by not pushing far enough or pushing too far, it goes into a gutter and leads right back to its original position. In order to solve this, it's not that hard. You just gotta time your force pushes correctly. But if all it is timing, then is it really a puzzle? And when you finally get that ball on the little plate, it doesn't feel that satisfying. All you feel is, oh yay, I finally got the timing right. I didn't solve a puzzle. I didn't do something amazing. All I did was time my force push right. It just feels unrewarding. It gives no feeling of accomplishment. And that's assuming that you do it without BD1's hints. That's right. BD1 can give you hints that if you use them and they are helpful and you get the solution to the puzzle, you're just gonna feel like an idiot that you had to use BD1's hint in the first place because, again, they're not difficult puzzles, they're just difficult to execute. And the worst part about all of this is that the puzzles only lead to optional content. And other than the occasional mini boss that you might find, which are actually pretty fun whenever you use, we'll get to the combat later. Most of the time, the optional content only gives you useless cosmetics, some lore drops that really don't pertain to the game but are more fan service for Star Wars fans, and stims. that you don't actually need to beat the game. This leads me to what I personally think is the most atrocious part of Fallen Order, and that's the level design. Now, for me, and I'm only speaking for me, I don't want to speak for other people because I know people love exploratory games. That's why there's Minecraft, that's why there's No Man's Sky. Like, people love just exploring things. But for me, there was never a time when I was excited to explore a world in this game, because I knew that whenever I finally explore like some far off part of the world, I'm gonna have to get back. Now, it's BD1 showing you the map, and so they all look pretty much the same, just blue with some yellow and red and green to tell you where you can, can't, or haven't yet gone. And because of this, it's really hard to distinguish between the maps. It's also really hard to understand where you are and where you can or cannot go, because there are a dozen branching paths, many of them looping back onto each other, and with many of them that have shortcuts that lead to part of the branching path that then doesn't have a shortcut to get you to the part that you actually need, even though you think it probably should. Like listen, I'm stupid. Like, there's no question about it. I am just straight up stupid. I am an idiot. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. But even when I actually understood the maps and knew where I needed to go to get back to the Mantis, I was not excited because it was going to be like a 30-minute journey to get back to where I wanted to go. Oh hey, I want to go explore another planet. Whoops, I'm far away from the Mantis. Guess I'm gonna be on this world for another 15 to 30 minutes just trying to get off this godforsaken chunk of useless freaking rock. And the best part about this is that the maps and the paths back to where you want to go get even more confusing whenever you explore the optional areas. The maps of these areas get so crisscrossed and jumbled that it gets difficult to know where you need to be. But surely there's a benefit to exploring these optional areas of the game. Surely there are some bonuses to make me stronger so that I don't get flattened later by harder enemies. Nope. At most, you might find some mediocre mini-bosses that are really just slightly tougher versions of the bigger enemies that you already have faced and will likely face regularly throughout the rest of your playthrough. And some useless stem refills. And yes, I said useless. Throughout my first playthrough on Fallen Order, which I did on Jedi Master difficulty, I only found one bonus stem pack that's pretty hard to miss. That means I beat the game on the second hardest difficulty with 3 stems. And as long as you're willing to get good at parrying timing, which is not hard on Jedi Master difficulty, by the way, you're gonna beat the game with only a small number of stems. In fact, I played through all of New Game Plus on Jedi Grandmaster difficulty and beat the game with only 4 stems. I only took the time to grab 2 extra. I wasn't even originally planning on grabbing 2 extra, it was just kind of convenient for me. Now that brings us to the combat system, because I just told you, as long as you're okay with getting good at parrying, you won't need the extra stems. My honest opinion on Jedi Fallen Order's combat system? It's alright. Yeah, I don't really want to complain much about the combat system, but I will anyway. It is, in a word, unrefined. It's fine, but coming from games like Sekiro and Dark Souls, it just doesn't feel as polished. Like in Sekiro, where every single successful deflect just makes you feel like you're barely surviving a battle and that you're actually risking your life going for a deflect, Fallen Order's combat feels a little too easy. While it's cool to deflect a stormtrooper shot right back at him, it's just far too easy. I never once felt like I died because an enemy was difficult. I only ever felt like I died because I was either stupid or arrogant and went for parries when I shouldn't have, or went for attacks when I should have parried. I felt the entire time, from the very beginning, like I was a powerful, experienced Jedi, which doesn't make any sense. That brings us back to me complaining about Cal being a Padawan, because Cal went into hiding as a Padawan, which means he didn't have all of the combat experience that he should have. So then why does it feel like I'm controlling Luke Skywalker whenever I play as Cal? Like, How is Cal, from the very beginning, with ease, able to deflect stormtrooper shots right back at them? It doesn't make sense. For the entire early game, I felt far too powerful for a quote-unquote Jedi whose connection to the Force has been disjointed. And even in the late game, I still felt way too powerful. And so what's Respawn's solution for you feeling very powerful? What's their solution for making levels difficult? Is it new, more difficult enemies? How about complex level designs that make the combat encounters super interesting and exciting? Nope. Their solution is to just throw way more enemies at you. Way more of the exact same enemy, may I add. And Fallen Order's combat system, like Sekiro, really isn't designed ideally for you to fight a bunch of enemies at the same time. In Sekiro, they want you to use way more stealth or potentially even running away from enemies at times so that you aren't overwhelmed by like 20 enemies trying to attack you all at once. And the way that parrying works in both of these games, if you're taking on several enemies at once, you're either going to miss parries and get hit, or you're going to miss attack openings because you're too busy parrying another enemy's attack. So what on earth are you supposed to do when there's a ton of enemies on you? Well, you dodge roll. Now, in Fallen Order, there are actually two types of dodges, in case you didn't know this. There is sidestepping and there is the dodge roll. Now, sidestepping really isn't too satisfying or effective until you get an upgrade that slows down time whenever you precision sidestep. This makes it far more satisfying whenever you actually do get a precision sidestep because you feel cool. But also that doesn't always work. Sometimes you'll slow down and it'll seem like a precision sidestep, but you'll still get hit. That's a whole thing I don't really want to get into. I really didn't encounter it too much because I didn't use sidestepping too much. Instead, I used the dodge rolling. Now the dodge rolling also isn't very effective. Again, coming from Dark Souls where each dodge roll had plenty of iframes, even when those iframes felt wonky, it still felt like I was able to dodge attacks or dodge through attacks. But the iframes in Fallen Order's dodge roll just basically don't work. I don't even know if there are iframes with how many times I would dodge and still get hit. Now, Sekiro only has sidestepping for dodging, and that worked fine, but that sidestep also had some iframes, even though it was only a little bit. But it was enough to make it to where if you did perfectly time it, you could still avoid getting hit. Whereas in Fallen Order, again, it feels like there are no iframes. It is just you have to sidestep and pray that you sidestep far enough to avoid getting hit. Now, in the end, as much as I've complained about the combat system, it's not bad. It's just, again, unrefined compared to games that did the same mechanics or the same type of mechanics and just did it better. Now, finally, I want to end off this video by praising the game for what it does really well, because I do think it does some stuff pretty well. Most of this video has been my complaints on the game, but I don't actually hate the game. I don't love it, but it's not the worst game that I've ever played. There are some genuinely cool things that this game does. Some of the death blows, while boring to see time and time again, on that first view, they're amazing. You feel so cool just practically stabbing a stormtrooper out of the air and slamming him into the ground. And then after beating the game, if you choose to start New Game Plus, you get Inquisitor Cal's outfit and a red lightsaber, which are objectively the coolest outfits that you can wear as Cal and the coolest lightsaber you can use. Don't look at me like that. You know you love the way Siths look. And even if you don't choose to do New Game Plus, you then have access to what are called meditation battles. Now, there are two types of meditation battles. There's essentially what is an enemy rush. You face off against waves of enemies. I actually didn't play this one, but I've seen my roommate play it. It looks all right. Again, the combat system really isn't designed for you to face off against a bunch of enemies all at once, but hey, if it makes you feel cool finally beating that, go for it. What I did try is the second mode, which essentially allows you to customize whatever battle you want. So let's say you wanted to fight 5 giant spiders at once, you could do that. It's a really good thing I'm not arachnophobic or this would really suck. Another thing, even though I had to turn the graphics pretty far down because my dumpster fire of a PC can't run this game on good graphic settings, from what I've seen from YouTube videos and people with more powerful PCs or even consoles, the game looks amazing. Even on my crappy graphics, it looked amazing. The color design was beautiful. The worlds, as much as I hated the level designs, they were beautiful and really cool to look at, even though they weren't as fun to explore. And of course, as I said before, the story in this is magnificent. They really fleshed out the characters, made them feel like they really went through growth and struggles, and there were times where I was uncertain what a character would do, but I knew what I wanted them to do. But I was still satisfied with what they did in the end, even if it wasn't what I wanted them to do. Similarly to how I recommend Uncharted to some people, because again, Uncharted is kind of a janky game and it's not for everyone. This game is really good for people who want to enjoy the story and aren't too worried about the gameplay. If you're looking for amazing gameplay, Fallen Order just really isn't for you. I would, however, highly recommend Sekiro if you're looking for the combat style of Fallen Order, but just more satisfying. And that was my honest opinion on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Thank you for your time.
Now go touch grass, you nerds!